And I'm back again for another live. Hope you guys aren't getting tired of my face today. But let me get our guest on. She is another lovely, lovely lady. And we are going to be talking about building intimacy. She just joined us. Hello, hello.
Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited for
Mm-hmm.
this live juicy topic.
Yes, a little bit.
Awesome. So I just want to dive right in and just start with you introducing yourself.
Okay, so I'm Shamaree. I'm a relationship and intimacy coach, and I specialize in empowering women to get the confidence and pleasure that they deserve so that they don't have to settle for lack of satisfaction, especially within the context of relationships.
I love that, and that is so important,
Mm-hmm.
so needed. And for anyone else tuning in that doesn't know me, I am Kamene, and I do relationship coaching with art therapy. So I help individuals and couples become their best relationship self so that they can then live in their relationship, the best relationship they've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. So, why don't we just go right in? And so, how do we even define intimacy? Because I feel like that's one of those words that kind of has like this vague thing that everyone has their own meaning to what they think that means. So, how would you define intimacy?
So when I think about intimacy, I think of it as closeness. If you look up the definition, that's one of the definitions, just literally closeness. So I
Mm,
know a lot of times when you say intimacy or you want to be intimate with someone, a lot of people they automatically go to sex, but intimacy is just a closeness or a familiarity. So that can be anything essentially. So there are a lot of different ways that you can put that forth, but that's what it is. It's just closeness.
Right. And I think that's like the main point too, right? Is like it's not only sex and it's not only physical, right? There's so
Yeah.
many non-physical, non-sexual ways that you can be intimate with a person. So I would love to hear about, what that looks like when you're working with couples of, when they start feeling disconnected or, when they start recognizing these other ways to be intimate with their partners.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned that it's not only physical because that's another thing too. So, like, if it's not sex, a lot of times people think, okay, well, it's close, like you're touching each other, you're feeling each other, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. And there's emotional intimacy, there's intellectual intimacy, spiritual intimacy. So, there's so many different ways that we experience it. And sometimes we don't recognize that we're not having the intimacy that we want, and that there's a disconnect because of how we conceptualize it as being
Mm-hmm.
physical. So a lot
Right.
of times when people are seeking help, it's not necessarily only because there's a physical issue, right? So it could be that maybe they're a little bit more irritable or their partner's a little bit more irritable. Maybe they're not making eye contact. They're not having conversations anymore. They're just living these
Mm-hmm.
parallel lives. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're together, we do our everyday
We
routine, but we're
roommates,
not
like
really. Yeah, exactly, exactly. We're not connecting. So like you live here, I live here, and I have my own life, you have your own life, and it comes together because we live together and we're next to each other, but it's missing that connection part, that bond in the middle. So it's a lot of different ways that people present that, but that's a lot of it is not necessarily because the physical is missing. There's that too, absolutely. A lot
mm-hmm.
of times, if you don't have that connection, you don't have that bond, then you're probably not having a lot of sex either. But there's so much more to it. You could still be having sex and not feel as close to your partner.
Yes. And I think some good points that you led to, right? Like as far as that emotional intimacy, right? Like is it someone that feels like their partner's really closed off or guarded or emotionally unavailable, right? So it's like you're trying to like put your heart out there on the line and like let them in and feel connected, but they're like super guarded or they're just shutting you out. Like that's gonna build some tension or some disconnect in that type of intimacy too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So super good point. What have you noticed like in the clients that you serve is things that kind of led, like how did they even get here, right? How does this happen where we're like we look up and it's like, maybe a bunch of time has passed or not, but we just look up and it's like, I don't even feel like connected to you anymore. We don't have that like intimacy anymore. So how does that happen?
So a lot of it is kind of just life stuff. So it's not necessarily, I know a lot of people say, well, if you love me, if you care about me, then we wouldn't have these problems. But it's not necessarily that. Like, I can still really love you. I can still care about you. But life happens outside of just this relationship. So there's tons of other relationships that I have. So like work could be stressing me out and I just don't have energy when I come home. And it's nothing to do with you, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm at my limit and I can't take anymore, right? So it could be work stuff, it could be just overall stress, it could be relationships like with your family, it could be mental health concerns. So if you already have other mental health concerns, whether that's anxiety, depression, any personality disorders, like anything else going on, if you're experiencing symptoms of that, it's going to be very hard to be present with your
Mm-hmm.
partner if you're not taking care of yourself. So
Right.
and if you're just busy, so like we get busy and like, oh, I have all these things that I need to do. I have
Mm-hmm.
this to do for work. I have to make sure I drop the kids off here. And there's just so many other things going on that you just don't carve out the time. So those are like kind of the main things that I notice. It's that busyness and I'm
Mm-hmm.
too busy. I don't have time. It's being overwhelmed, overworked elsewhere, experiencing strain in other relationships that kind of spills over. Like you
Mm-hmm.
get it because I come home to you. Maybe I'm mad at my boss, but
Right.
you're going to experience it as soon as I come home. All of that comes out. So that's kind of what I notice is that misdirected or just life.
Hmm. I think I want to add to that too, because that's such a good point of like the busyness, right? Like we always kind of create these situations where we're like, oh, well, I really have to do this, or then this came up, and we start to like put our relationship as a back burner. I think
Mm-hmm.
because we're like, oh, well, this person, like I see you every day, or I know you're gonna be home, with
Mm-hmm.
me while I'm trying to finish this thing. So we're like, I'll get to that, right?
Eventually,
And we
right.
kind of, right, eventually, and then it just keeps getting pushed off. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other thing too I was gonna say is like all I've been, I wouldn't say victim to that, but I would say I've done that where I'm like, I really need to get this work done, or like I really need to like do this, right? And I kind of get caught up in like the tasks that I need to get done. And it's really like my husband has really helped me like taking like slowing down and being like that stuff will be there tomorrow, like like I'm here now type of thing, and helping me recenter and like realign with like what is really important in this moment. Like I can get back to all that paperwork tomorrow, like that's not so serious.
Mm-hmm.
But it's again just people being able to prioritize what's important to them and having those like upfront honest discussions and that type of intentionality in the relationships to say like you're right, like doing this paper, like back when I used to work at my old job, it was like very paperwork driven, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, I have a deadline, I got to do this, I got to do that, right? But it's like, okay, is that job more important to me than this lifelong partnership I'm trying to build?
Right.
Are they going to be there for me when I need this other type of loving? No.
Right, right, exactly. And I think it is a lot of that. It's because we have these deadlines for these other things. So like if you have a job, you have work that needs to be done by a certain time. With your relationship, we don't really put deadlines on it. So like by tomorrow, you need to hug me 5 times and like
Right.
it doesn't exist. So it's like, oh, I'll do that later. This I know I need to have done by the end of the week. So I'll just devote my time to this so that I know it's done by the end of the week. And then if I have time after, then I can
Mm-hmm.
address this. But I think that, like you said, prioritizing, because at the end of the day, like if you don't finish the work, you do it another day. Like,
Yeah.
so what? And if you were to lose your job tomorrow, they'll replace you that same day. So
Right. And then
you
you
have
still have this other person in your life that like has been put on the back burner this whole
right.
time.
And
And
they're
so now it's
hurting.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
now it's like, cool, now we're just disconnected and I'm feeling some type of way and you don't even have that job anymore. So now what?
Right, exactly. So prioritizing it, and it's a balance. Obviously, everyone's going to look a little bit different,
Hmm.
but definitely making sure that it's not an afterthought. It should be towards the top of your list for sure.
Yeah, and I think adding to it too is like if you know like you have like a really heavy week or a really heavy day like at work, like just keeping on that topic, right? Having that discussion with your partner ahead of time, like, hey, especially if you know like you're usually like really caught up at work, or you just know that you're gonna have to stay a little bit later in the office, or you like really have to do something. I think just letting them know ahead of time, like, hey, just letting you know, like I gotta be on this till like 8 p.m. tonight. I know that's typically like our us time, so I just
Yeah.
want to let you know, like it's gonna bleed in a little bit, and then I'll be able to give you my full attention. Or you guys come up with a plan to like, cool, no worries, let's just try doing something like earlier tomorrow, or
Right.
then you can have they feel included in it, and it's not just like, oh, you made the decision without them.
Right, exactly. And it's that communication piece. It's like this, we have boundaries, right? And but life happens. We can't predict everything, right? So when those things happen, make sure that you're communicating it, letting them know like, hey, this is what's going on. And then it's easier to not feel as disconnected when they're involved in the process. Like you said, including
Exactly.
them in the decision making. So like, okay, well, today I'm going to have to spend a little bit more time on this, and that's just what it is. But what can we do maybe tomorrow or another day
Right.
that will help to balance this out a little bit?
Right, exactly. I think that would save a lot of
Oh,
heartaches out
yeah.
there. People be in their feelings, and then they'd be all petty afterwards, like, you wanted to be on that meeting instead.
Right, right. And then you get the silent treatment, and it's just like communication can save a lot of arguments. I swear I would have so many less arguments in my past if I would have just said something, or if they would have just said something at the beginning. Like, once you know, like, yes, it can be sad. Like, ultimately, if I have plans and you can't do it, I'm going to be a little bit sad, and that's
Yeah.
fair. Like, those are feelings that it will go away. Like,
Yeah.
feelings do not last forever. I've never felt one emotion consistently for my whole life. Like
Yeah.
it changes all of the time.
Absolutely. So I know we've talked a little bit about like how this can like manifest, but like what are other ways that you've seen that this can show up in a relationship, or like when people start to feel disconnected, how does that really look in a person or in a relationship?
All right. So like I said, like the living parallel. So like being separate, like the lack of touch or the lack of um, kind of conversation. So if you know that your partner like is a touchy feely person, and every time they pass by you, they have to smack your butt or they have to touch you in some way, and then they're not doing that anymore.
Hmm.
And you're not having a conversation about it. It's not something that is a known thing between the two of you. That's how you can start to notice. And a lot of times people are like, oh, especially women, unfortunately, they're like, oh, well, he doesn't like me anymore, or he doesn't find me
Yeah.
attractive. And the
Yeah.
thoughts go there. But sometimes that can be the manifestation of like stress or overwhelm somewhere else, or maybe they're not satisfied with something that is going on between the two of you, but they're not communicating it. So that
Hmm.
lack of communication, the change in behaviors, and the normal things are no longer the normal things, which
Hmm.
does happen, but you have to have a conversation. Like if it's changed and they're no longer a touchy feely person, then that's fine. But just having a conversation and saying like, hey, what's going on? Um,
Exactly. I think, and we're just kind of leading back to that same theme about communicating with each other. Because, I've had times where like I was maybe like oblivious to something that I did differently, right? Like my husband maybe brought it up, like, hey, like, how come you don't do blank anymore? Like, I noticed you used to do this a lot, or we used to do this a lot, and we haven't been doing that lately. And so then again, just kind of bringing that up and like coming from a place of like non-judgment, like, oh, he's not attacking me, right? Like, he's letting me know, he's helping me gain my awareness of the way that I have changed, or the way that I'm behaving, or
right.
the way that I'm speaking, or whatever it may be, in order to help, right? It's always coming from that place of love so that we can be better together and can go back to a place where we felt really strong or connected.
Right. Yeah. So definitely letting them know that communication for sure. And sometimes, like you said, you just don't know that you're doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just kind of fall out of the pattern. And it's not necessarily a conscious thing. It's not something that I'm deciding, okay, today I'm not going to do this
Right.
purposely. I'm going to see if they notice or see if it makes a difference in my life. But it can definitely happen for sure. So it's great that you have that communication to say like, okay, I've noticed this. Is there anything behind that? Or like, what's
Mhm.
going on? Like, let me know something. And sometimes it's not, and that's fine. But sometimes it is if you really sit and think about it.
Yeah, I remember like just a funny like small example of that. Like usually if like I leave earlier in the mornings than he wakes up, right? I'll like, kiss him while he's sleeping. And sometimes he'll be like half asleep and can feel like know that I said bye. And then
Mm-hmm.
like I remember one day he like called me and was like, "Why didn't you say bye to me this morning?" And I was like, "I did, but you were like dead asleep. Like you didn't even like move.
Mm-hmm.
Normally he'll like kind of move around." And I
Right.
was like, "No, I did, but you were like so passed out." And he was just like, "Oh, I didn't feel anything." But imagine if like he didn't
Yeah.
ask and he was
Yeah.
just in his feels the rest of the day and was giving me cold shoulder or was just like having an attitude, and I would have no idea what it was for. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
that's just like a small example of like a real life thing that happened.
Oh no, yeah, it definitely happens. Like, oh, I didn't even like notice that it would have that big of an impact. It could be like the smallest thing, something that you don't think is important. But
Yeah.
like I said, my husband's very touchy feely. So if he doesn't touch me, like I'm like,
What's
something's not
wrong? Right.
something's not right today. Like what like, what's going on? I need to know.
Yeah. We have really good friends of ours who are married, right? And he every month, not on the same day, but every month will give her a bouquet of flowers, right? And so he's been doing this for years, like on the dot every month.
Mhm.
And that's like kind of like her love language, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a way that they are intimate and connected, and he provides that, right? Gives her that feeling. And he said one day he intentionally didn't do it one month just to see, because he's like,
Yeah.
she's been doing it for a while, like she's probably gotten used to it, right?
Right.
And so he was like curious if she would have any type of like reaction. And she literally like we did a live together about this, and she was like, "Yeah, I remember like feeling some type of way, like where are my flowers this month,
Right.
And like he's just
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay, so you do still like desire that, you do still look for that." He's like, I wasn't sure. So then he continued it. But it's things like that, like again, another non-physical, non-sexual
Mhm.
way of showing that intimacy to each other.
And that's something that could also cause that disconnect too. So like if she never said, like if they never had a conversation about it and it just like went on that way and like, oh, did things change here? Like maybe I
Right.
should take a step back and analyze like what's actually going on. So it's those miscommunications sometimes that cause a disconnection and not necessarily something that's very intentional or
Hmm.
something I'm trying to do to hurt you.
Right. Cool. I'm trying to think of anything else in that area. um so when a couple comes to you and they're feeling disconnected, you've understood how they got here, what are like some steps or tips or things that you give them to try or to do, so that they can start like rebuilding that connection to each other?
Okay, so the first thing, we kind of mentioned this before, but just kind of prioritizing it. So, like making it very intentional, like this is something that we're committed to work on. And ideally, obviously, both people are going to be committed to doing that.
Yes, that usually
Uh,
helps.
that, like, it's so much easier. So, like, of course, you can kind of influence change as an individual, but it's much easier if everyone's kind of on the same accord and maybe they don't have the same level of motivation as you, which I mean, we're two different people, it's expected. But some level of commitment towards, okay, this is what we're going to work on, and this is important to me. And then from there, it's finding those areas. So, they always say you should have a date night, right? So you should commit yourself to having date night time that you are just a couple. So especially if you're a parent, you're a caregiver in
Mhm.
any way, if you have a lot of other responsibilities to other people in your life, it's very important that you have time that you can just focus on being a partner
Yeah.
and just focus on the relationship. So I always suggest prioritizing that. And if you have to schedule it and put it in a calendar, set an alarm on your phone, make a reminder, whatever you have to do just to make sure that you're staying committed and accountable for this, that shows that it's something that's important to you. So that shows that you're prioritizing it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are like opposed to like being so structured about it. They're like, it should be spontaneous, it should be fun. Sometimes it can't be like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
Right.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah. I think it's all right, independent of each other's lifestyles, right? And people's like, okay, if you have kids, you can try to be spontaneous, but it's usually with kids, like you either need to like have a plan of like who can babysit, or if you're taking them with you, or if it's just for you, there has to be a little bit more intentionality with it. And I think especially as we grow into our later stages of relationships, or kids become a factor into that as well, it's like people forget like you still need to like date your partner,
Right.
right? If you're married, you still need to date them. And so having that as a priority in ways of like continue to do the things that you did in order to get them, right? And so it's like continue
Yeah.
that courtship, continue that like flirtiness. Okay, I'm gonna get all dolled up, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do something special, we're gonna go out here, right? And so just like keep remembering the things that you used to do in the beginning that got you guys
Mhm.
really excited and really connected.
Right. Yeah. And I always say this too, like people are like always like, oh, it should be spontaneous. We should just know and we should be able to just connect naturally and all these things. It's just an innate feeling that I have. And that's fine if it happens that way. But when you're starting to date someone, so usually you're living separately, right? So you have to
Mm-hmm.
call them, text them, whatever you do to set up times that you're having dates, to set up
You're right.
times that you're going to spend time together. It's no different to doing that. Like you started out that way.
Right.
You didn't. It didn't
Right.
start out, I meet you, we're in love, and we're touching each other and going on romantic dinners. Like, that's not how it works. You plan it out. You're very intentional. Like, we're going to spend this time together. We're going to get to know each other. We're going to ask each other questions. Like, all of that should continue. Like you said, do
Mm-hmm.
those same things. I don't think that is different. You know them better now, hopefully.
Right.
Hopefully.
Right. Hopefully.
but, but that doesn't mean that that has to change. You still spend time because we grow and we change. Like, I don't think I'm the same person today that I
Yeah.
was when I met my husband 10 years ago. Like,
Right.
I think that I've grown a lot since then. So getting to know who I am today is going to be different than what it was before, but you still need to be asking those questions, devoting that time, and really committing yourself to it the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such a great point too, is like as you grow as a person and as a couple, you're also going to be into different things, right? And so you have to find new ways to reconnect and build intimacy for who you are now. They
Yeah.
may not enjoy the same things that they did when you first started dating or your first year in marriage or wherever it may be. So that's why I like continuing to learn each other and have those discussions and try new things. So as you're in different stages, you're like, okay, well now I'm really into this and have fun. Let's have fun with this. And so,
Right.
yeah, just continuing that conversation.
Absolutely.
Cool. And, the way that I use, art therapy and stuff, especially at this retreat that I'm planning to really build bonds with each other, is that gets people, one, out of their comfort zone of like doing something creative together. So it's kind of like, okay, we both trying something new. We're both beginners at this and learning to like laugh at things again and not take it so seriously. It's kind of like, okay, go roller skating. Like, you remember like back when they used to have roller skating rinks and stuff? And it's like,
Mhm.
or if you go like ice skating with someone, it's like something that you're like not used to doing. So you can't
Yeah.
really like try to look cool. You're just like, all right, well, I'm trying this out. And we're just going to be playful and fun. Right. And so I
Mhm.
try to like find ways to bring those type of scenarios when I'm working with couples and give them like a shared activity or a shared thing that they're actually having to be intimate, one, because of the things that it's pulling up for them, but also because they're like sharing space, they're sharing materials, they're like creating something together. So that's going to have a whole new level of connection and intimacy that they probably haven't tried before, especially if
Right.
they've never done art therapy.
Yeah, no, and I love that because I always talk about like the shared experience. So doing something together, especially if it's a new thing, like you said,
Hmm.
something that you guys are kind of learning together, it kind of automatically bonds you, or like something that's like a team building sort of
Right.
activity, like with school and work, they always have you do these trust days and team build. They don't do that because they care about you guys bonding. They do it because it makes you work better together when you have
Yeah.
a closer relationship with people. So the
Hmm.
more that you're able to do those new and fun things together, where you work together, you collaborate, you try new ideas, it automatically bonds you a little bit closer. So
Exactly.
that's intimacy right there, just that bond of doing something together.
Hmm.
And then ideally, you'll be having conversation in the midst of that. And like I said, with communication, that can build intimacy as well, as you're kind of learning new things about the person, or maybe like they've never seen them draw something before. Like, like a lot
Hmm.
of people, especially adults, a lot of people,
Yeah.
unless you're a very creative person, maybe that's not an outlet that you use often. So that might be something that they can get new insight about you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the main thing that I love to see come about when I'm doing my work with clients is like they are uncovering completely new parts of themselves that they didn't know were there because they didn't know how to access it. And the only way they were able to access it was from doing the art. So now it's like, holy shit, I just like found this out about myself, but like you're here too and you're just finding this out
Right.
about me. So it's like we're both learning a whole new part of myself together. And
Right.
that's something that probably wouldn't have come about if they weren't doing that activity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why, like, with my husband, I do this all the time, like, therapize the relationship. But I came up with like a whole list of different date ideas because we can get really caught in a loop, like, oh, let's go to dinner, let's go to the movie, let's go get drinks,
Yeah. And you
dinner,
go to your same
movie.
places.
The same exact places, the same type of date every single time. And I mean, that's cool to do, but it's nice to bring in a new element. So
Hmm.
you like to keep it fresh. So I have a whole list, and there's different categories too. So category like for at home, like
Hmm.
creative dates at home, and
Hmm.
you could do like a paint and sip night. I have like baking on there, like doing like drink wars, and that's really
Ooh.
we each
I'm gonna
make
need some of these.
they're like make like mixed drinks together. So like you're doing an activity together. It's also at home. So like if you
Yeah.
don't have a lot of financials for like fun
Hmm.
leisure activities, then you don't have to worry about that because you can still have dates at home. Like we have dates at home.
Yeah.
We mix it up just to keep it interesting. So definitely trying those new things that you can experience for the first time together, things
Hmm.
that spark conversation that maybe are not your normal conversations. Because on the
Right.
daily, it's like, well, how was your day? Oh,
Right.
the weather was like this. What's going on
Right.
in the news? Oh, I saw this video online. But like
Hmm.
different conversations about like things that you don't typically discuss. That's
Yeah.
what actually brings you closer.
And I think, and I've done this before too, just because sometimes I'm like, okay, like trying to find those different fun questions, right? Like, let's get into different conversation. Like, and this is something that any person could do, right? Go onto like Pinterest or Google, and they have like
Mm-hmm.
all these like really cool fun, and like there's different categories too. Like
Right.
sometimes you're like wanting to like get to know like personally someone. Sometimes they're like, okay, sexual ones or things for
Right.
fun or like, different categories. It's cool to then you get to explore those different areas of your person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I like using those as just kind of like a starting point, and then
Yeah.
after like one or two, we usually get into a conversation deeply about something. So I would just give that as like a tip for people. If you're wanting to find that intimacy more, like just start having these different type of conversations and make it fun.
Right, absolutely. You can make it a game. We've
Hmm.
done that too. Like, people write like on the Jenga, like the different
Hmm.
questions, different truth or dares. Like there's ways to make it a fun activity. Because I think a lot of times, especially when people are going through like a struggle or a conflict in their relationship, they have a tendency to want to be very serious. So like, oh, we're gonna fix it and we're gonna be very
Yeah.
serious. We're
Yeah.
fixing it. Like I need to know that you're not playing. This is not funny. This is not a
Right.
game. But
Right.
but you can have fun while you're doing it. So like, yes, some of the things may be very serious conversations, and like some of the little cards, like if you get a game or something, some of them are going to be serious topics, but that doesn't mean that you can't have fun while you're doing it. So making sure to incorporate that, because that kind of just puts more pressure on it when you're trying to be so serious. And then if the person's not taking it as serious, or they try to make it fun,
Mm-hmm.
if you get offended by that, that creates just more conflict. So
Mm-hmm.
it's easiest to try to relax, be present in the moment, take it for what it is, enjoy it. If something's funny, it's okay to laugh about it. It's okay to
Right.
enjoy it. Doesn't mean you don't take it seriously.
Right. Absolutely. I think, yeah, just having that, like, what's the intention, right? Like, someone's just being funny or laughing because they're trying to get you to loosen up a little bit,
Right,
right? It's not
right.
because they're like, oh, I think this is dumb, so I'm just going to laugh. It's like, no, like, let's make it fun. Let's, not be so serious all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so I would love to hear or for you to share like any ways that people can get in touch with you. How can they work with you? Do you have anything coming up that they can, tap into?
Yes, yes. So if you click the little thing at the top, the drop down, you can follow me. So on my, excuse me, on my Instagram, I have my link, my Easy Tree. If you click on that link, it has all of the services and products and things that I offer. So I do have some freebies. So if you're just interested in getting some free physical intimacy types, sex topics, and I have a webinar on confidence. So if you're just interested in that, it's all there. You just input your email and you get it immediately. But then I do also have some paid services. Right now I have a course that is available. It's called Better Sex: Guide to Confidence, Satisfaction, and Orgasms Without Faking. And that will also be in the Easy Tree if you're interested in that. But I'm also launching a group coaching program very soon.
Ooh.
So if you are interested in that, then you definitely want to be following me so that you can become a part of it. And I'm all about, like I said, confidence and pleasure. We all deserve it. We should have it. And we should not have to fake it. No
Yes.
faking it till we make it. We're going to make it real. We're going to create it. We should have it.
I love that. And I wish I could add the little heart things that everyone can do when they're on here. I'm just like, okay, click like. So yes, everyone definitely check her out. Check out all those amazing programs and things that she offers. I will shamelessly plug, I have an amazing, amazing couples retreat coming up June 3rd to 6th in Sedona, Arizona. So it's going to be an amazing weekend. I have space in the private villa for 5 couples to join, and we'll be doing a bunch of fun like group excursions and activities, and we'll be also be having great conversations like this about ourselves and our relationships. So that is my big thing that's coming up. And then I also have some free relationship values workshops that I'll be doing again in April. So that first week of April, I'll be posting some of the dates and times. But I love doing these free workshops where people can really get to have like a taster and a really experience art therapy for free in this kind of cool zone. So I'll be doing those in April.
Nice, nice.
Yep. Awesome. This has been such a great conversation. Make sure to catch the replay if you didn't see it live.
Yes, please do.
Yes. All right. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.